Welcome to the Sample Chapter Podcast, the show where authors read a sample chapter from one of their books. Here's your host, Jason A. Meiske.
Hey everybody, Jason here, and this is episode 10 of the Sample Chapter Podcast. Welcome back. I'm going to spend a few minutes, going over a couple things, but try not to take too much time. We do have an extra long episode today because your happy-go-lucky host got pretty wrapped up in this upcoming interview. We lost track of time, but as you're going to see, there's just too much good stuff. Oh my gosh, this might be, very well could be my favorite episode so far. We'll see. I don't know. This is a lot of fun. You're going to enjoy it. Let me start with the quick, our weekly thank yous. Podcast Garden, of course, our host site. They have a lot of shows out there for you to listen to if you're interested in finding other podcasts like mine. If you want to start your own show, you can do so for free. You just record your show, enter the information, hit the upload button, and you are off and running. I want to thank U-Store-All out of Warrensburg, Missouri. They are one of our sponsors of the show. U-Store-All. They can take care of all of your self-storage needs. They have a fully fenced-in facility. It's gated access, climate control, conventional. The whole place is concrete driveways and well lit all night long. That's the place to go. So don't forget to check out their website at ustoreall.net. That is the letter U, STORALL.net. Thank you for sponsoring the show. So last week we had Martha Carr on here. We had a wonderful time. It was my first chance getting to talk to her. And man, she surprised me a couple days later. I got a little care package in the mail with my own Got Troll mug. It has a picture of Lyra and YTT on one side, Got Troll on the other side. There's a picture of this up on my Facebook page. So if you head over there, facebook.com/Sample Chapter Podcast, you can see a picture of me taking a sip out of that coffee mug. Now, see, and that's why you need to be following my Facebook page, because yes, we're going to talk about things on the show, but if I hear about contests or giveaways and stuff, I'm going to also share that. So make sure you go over to facebook.com/Sample Chapter Podcast and like the page so you can get updated on any kind of new releases or contests or giveaways, whatever, and you yourself could end up with something like that. This was really cool, and I'm really appreciative of Martha Carr sending me one of those, and I've got it set up right here in my office right now, looking right at it. So, hey, YTT. All right, well, I also need to do a shout out to Roger Colby from back in episode 3. He's my good buddy out of Oklahoma, and he snuck in book 3 of the 5 Rims series. The Shibboleth Code came out, I think it was Friday, last week. I had been up to my eyeballs in work and in and out all over the place, lots of stuff going on. So I totally missed that he was even doing this, and all of a sudden, next thing I know, I get an email, and boom, there it is. And so you got to check it out. I've got also over on our Facebook page, I've got a picture of his cover, which is outstanding. Man, this thing is a cool cover. You got to look at it. But be sure to hop over to his Amazon page and or go to his website, writingishardwork.com, and you can see the book and follow the links to pick up a copy of it for yourself. So, hey, Roger, congratulations. Today's show is a wonderful example of writing community and writers, how we branch out and become friends with each other. Just like Roger, he and I have been friends for years because he did a writing podcast that I was listening to. And we started communicating back and forth and became friends. Same thing. After Roger's show went off the air, I found this other show with a couple of guys, and I started corresponding with them. And next thing you know, we have a blossoming friendship amongst writers. They were brand new at the time. They had been recording their show, which was tracking their beginnings as a writer. It was really, really cool concept. It's called the Part-Time Writer Podcast with Lee Barbant and Chris Raymond. It was a really cool show. They would talk about how they would try, fail, try, fail, try, success each week as they learned the whole process of writing and putting out new books. And it's a really cool concept and really cool show, fun to listen to. And like I said, I got to correspond with them, and we became friends, and we've corresponded a few times. And so getting to talk to them was a real highlight for me. Getting to actually see them and speak through Skype in person. And, and it's because of these guys that I've had some of the guests that I've got so far. They now write in the Michelangelo universe, and it's because of talking with them. They were the ones who helped set up my talk with Michelangelo in the first place, and through that, became Martha Carr, and it's just kind of opened the door to this whole other world for me. Thanks to these guys, and man, I mean, this has just been awesome, and I'm having a fantastic time getting to talk to people. I don't know. You're gonna see in this episode. I mean, we talk and we laugh and we have a great time, and it's like a couple of old friends getting together. You're gonna see real quick why I'm looking at this as perhaps one of my favorite episodes. So let's get on over to the show with Lee Barbant and Chris Raymond. Today we have Lee Barbant and Chris Raymond with us today. Guys, welcome to the show.
Hey, Jason.
Thanks for having us.
It's good to be here.
Yeah, I'm happy to have you both. This is a great pleasure for me, and I appreciate you coming on. So, well, let's start things off. Tell the audience a little bit about yourselves and how you guys got started writing together.
Yeah. It was a dark and stormy night.
You talk about you're the one who got me started in this, so I feel like you should be the one.
Yeah, Lee and I have known each other for years, and actually he was one of my students, believe it or not. Mm-hmm. And the student has become the master.
I'm still your student. Always your student.
So after he had graduated from the program that I teach at, he just hung around town looking for work. Mm-hmm. And one day I had started. Probably 3.5 years ago, I started writing fiction. I was writing little stories for my daughter. And one night we were sitting around, drinking around a campfire. And I looked at Lee and I said, hey, we should write a story together. And he said, okay. And that's how it all started.
I'm pretty agreeable. That's my personality.
When he said okay, I was like, oh, crap.
You were just trying to be polite.
I was, yeah. I was just trying to make conversation because I'm so awkward. So let's see, two years ago, we started writing together, and we've done a lot of different projects. You want to talk about?
Yeah, we had a superhero trilogy set in good old Pittsburgh, where we're based out of, and that was a ton of fun.
The Steel City Heroes.
About professors in the city trying to, figure out how to teach well and then fight crime.
And get healthcare.
It's only semi-autobiographical.
That's right.
Then we did a kind of a sci-fi thriller series that technically is still ongoing, but we haven't done anything with it for a while, called the Jack Carson series, which we had a ton of fun with. Kind of a big mystery throughout the whole thing, but then each book has got its own self-contained story. The last year of our life has been totally devoted to writing in Michael Anderle's Arthurian Gambit universe. We started a new age called the Age of Magic. It takes place several hundred years in the future. The world's kind of reverted back to a medieval state, and magic has arisen, and it's about the heroes and villains who try to make the earth their own.
Yeah.
Working on a new series now. It's an urban fantasy series with gods, the return of the gods to Earth, and the chaos that they bring with them, and the humans kind of caught in the midst of that. And it's been a ton of fun.
It's been really fun.
Yeah.
So, all right. So you already talked about it a little bit. You got the Jack Carson series, the Steel City Heroes. Now you're in Age of Magic. You got a real knack for developing heroes. So let's go about developing the heroes that you have in there.
Oh, man, that's a great question.
We thought this was going to be like a fluff interview.
Yeah, we thought this was going to be softballs.
Jeez.
I got to give the readers something to look forward to.
Let me start on this one, and then I'll let you jump in, because Lee he's like a superhero, he's like a superhero fanatic. And I would say that I'm more like the urban fantasy type guy. So when we first started writing our first book, one of my favorite series that I had just finished reading or caught up with was Jim Butcher's The Dresden Files series. And so when we started writing, I had this picture in my head that we were going to do this urban fantasy in kind of the style of Butcher, and we were going to have like these snarky like magicians running around the streets of Pittsburgh. And before I knew it, Lee tricked me. So why don't you take over and talk about your heroes?
Superheroes are just so cool right now. I don't know why everyone should be writing superheroes. I don't understand.
And even more so, everybody should be reading superheroes, which they're not. But how do you craft our heroes? What would you say about that?
It's an evolving process for us. One of the things that we committed to when we first started writing is to constantly push ourselves to be better. So I think each series we've done, we've figured out I don't know our style that we like more and more. And then working with Michael has been really helpful with that, because Michael is a lover of a pure hero. So with the Steel City Heroes, I was really invested in the idea of flawed people kind of forced to make heroic choices. And so the biggest like critical pushback we got from the book was that all of our characters were terrible people. Why would anyone like them? And so, and there's something I still have a little spot in my heart for the flawed hero. But then kind of working the Age of Magic, working alongside of Michael, we came to see that people really love investing themselves as readers into someone they can really get behind, someone they can really root for, someone who's got their code and is going to stick to it. And so we've been trying to, find the balance of that, I think. Characters that are heroic and then still have their flaws, and part of their journey is not just defeating the bad guy, but defeating their own flaws and stuff.
Yeah, chasing down their demons.
Yeah. Literal demons and the metaphorical demons.
That's right.
Yeah.
Love it. Now, you've also, with each of your heroes, especially when you started out with Steel City, you got heroes who have specialized powers. There's the Russian guy. There's and I'm forgetting the name. You may have to jump in on there. You got the poet.
If we can remember.
Oh, so many. Yeah, Elijah and Willa.
Willa is the poet, and then we have Elijah, who's got a steel, molten steel monster. And
he's been possessed by the spirit of a Croatian protector, local deity.
A lot of research.
Yeah, the first books took a lot of research. That's something that was a lot of fun.
And then we had Kem, who was like the crazy, chemist who got thrown out of the academy for doing all sorts of dirty stuff.
Yeah, the mad scientist.
Mad scientist.
But like, who could be a hero?
I'm starting to like these books again.
You'll never. Your first thing for me, anyways, was the first thing that I ever wrote, and that
you never forget your first time.
Yeah, I will always be devoted to the Steel City Heroes.
Yeah.
And I love the fact that we set it in Pittsburgh. That was just a blast for me. The best.
Which is our home.
Yeah, the best review I ever got. Someone was like a Pittsburgher that I knew was reading, and they're like, I feel like I know exactly where the action's happening. I know why it's happening. I know the context. I feel like I can see myself in the story. And the best critical review we ever got was someone was like, well, I guess if you like Pittsburgh, you'll like this book.
3 stars.
Yeah, so I took that. That's a badge of honor for us, I guess. But we haven't gone back to Pittsburgh in any of our series.
Not yet.
I have in my mind, all of our books will eventually converge back in Pittsburgh. We might have to wait till
with one massive meetup.
Book 50 of the Rise of Magic.
Yeah.
All roads lead to Pittsburgh.
That's right.
Well, and then you had that. You got Jack Carson, who's got the mysterious thing. I've only read the first book, and you just touched on it, which was a masterful stroke. So just touch on it. Don't go into it. I'm sad to say I have book 2, but I haven't started it yet. So you have to forgive me. But he was affected by something, and he's using this power. How did you develop what's going on with Jack Carson? Maybe you guys can describe it without. I don't know if there's a spoiler there or.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's an interesting one, because it was our first shot at something that's more like a thriller. So we wanted to give it like the thriller vibe, but also make it definitely sci-fi. So we wanted to like have something that carried the reader along with sort of a mystery about this guy who you know nothing about. And actually, I almost said that we should read the first chapters of that, because I really like those first chapters where he's like on the bus.
Yeah.
He's sitting next to some kid from the military, a young Marine or something, and you're getting this vibe about him, but you can't really make out what his deal is.
Mm-hmm.
He kind of wanders into this town, and there's something different about him, and we start dropping some clues. And it really is by the end. Is it by it's a novella, so you get there relatively quickly. But by the end of the first book, you get a sense that of his power.
Yeah, you get a sense of what he is, but not why he is. And it was a difficult book for us to write because we typically spend a lot of time in our characters' minds on the page, a lot of internal monologue, a lot of narration and stuff. But with Jack Carson, we wanted to keep the readers out of his head for as long as possible and as much as possible. And so that was really, it was kind of a trick for us to try to tell a book with a main character that people could like without ever really knowing
who he is, what he is.
Yeah.
There's some red herrings thrown in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think if I could go back and recommend to us to not do that certainly not as that was our like a sophomore effort. I think that was a bit beyond us, but I really enjoyed it and I like those books. So maybe it's good I didn't listen to future me.
Well, something with Jack that I really liked too, though, was it gave me a very Bruce Banner, the Incredible Hulk kind of vibe. He's out there roaming, he's solving some problems. He's got this thing going on with him that helps him, but yeah, he's also being hunted. So it was really cool.
We always told ourselves it was the superheroes meet the A-Team.
We did?
That's what I always told myself.
No, you always talked about, here's what I liked. I liked the idea that it was like a sci-fi thriller in contemporary day with like a Western vibe going on.
Yeah, the Western.
So there was like kind of a Western, that's what we were shooting
He rolls
for.
into town.
Kind of rolls into town, the stranger.
Yep, deals some damage. His methods are not always clean, but he gets the job done. I like that kind of character a lot.
Save the girl.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that was fun.
I can see that. That works really well with it.
Nice.
Then you get into your Age of Magic, and just kind of awesome. Everything you got magic, so it just goes.
That's right.
I've talked with people who made magic that were based on the magicians can see ribbons, and that's how they pull strings and make magic happen. Other ones who, all sorts of different things. Where does your magic, where do you see it coming from, and how did you develop that?
Yeah. Well, by the time your listeners listen to this, Michael's interview and story will be up, so that should be helpful in kind of getting to it. So we're writing in Michael's Cthulhu Gambit universe, but we really try to write it in such a way that people can jump into our series, The Rise of Magic in the Age of Magic. So the first book's Restriction. The hope is they can jump into that without having read all of Michael's books. But the cool thing about what we're doing, so I remember before I'd even met Michael, I remember reading his tagline, and it was something like, everything you know about vampires and werewolves is wrong. And so he has this whole thing where he bases his paranormal world on alien technology. I don't think that's too much of it. You get that pretty early in the book.
Yeah.
And so because of that, we kind of jump 300 plus years into the future from his original series, but it's the same technology that creates the magic in this kind of future fantasy world.
Mm-hmm. And it's, none of the characters know the real history of where the magic came from. And there are hints of it, there's legends and stories. And that was, for me, that was the fun. I love high fantasy, but I always felt trapped by writing a high fantasy that you'd have to develop this 1,000-year history to really make it so. I like Tolkien. I feel like that was the standard. And with this, it was awesome that there's 100 books you can read before the Age of Magic that give out that history. It's got a rich past before our characters enter the scene, and our characters only know about that stuff in terms of myths and stories from the old day, legends about the gods of old and stuff like that. So trying to come up with a form where the magic was technical in nature, it's connected to, as Chris said, Michael's alien technology, but doesn't feel technical to any of the characters involved in it. To them, it's religion. That was kind of the idea behind it.
Okay, that's awesome. Have you guys had anything that's inspired you? Anything in your writing that has really led to your inspiration today?
Ooh. It's really interesting because I've been really inspired. We work with all these other authors now. So since we wrote The Rise of Magic, one of the things that we've been doing in Michael's company is that we're the showrunners. We're like the managers for this entire age, the Age of Magic. So all the stuff revolving around our universe. And now we're also managing the Age of Madness, which is zombie books right before ours. So Michael needed zombie books. And I'd say I'd say the most inspirational thing for me is actually the stuff that our collaborators are doing.
Yeah.
Like it's like an honor to work with we're like managing these authors who are actually better than us. And man, some of their work, like P.T. Hilton's book, Stormcallers, Amy Hopkins' work, Candy Crumb. I mean, if readers are interested in fantasy, I don't even know how many books are in the Age now.
We crossed the 30.
Yeah, it's 30 plus books in the Age, and these authors just write really kick-ass stories.
Yep.
So I would say they inspire me to write better books, and it's nice that part of our job is like reading these authors' works.
Yeah, that's just been the dream my whole life. I mean, even more than being a writer, I just wanted a job where I could read for a living, and it's like cool. And also, I have this like annoying habit, my wife would call it, where I like talk to the TV after we watch a movie and like, oh, I don't like this. I really like this, and like now I can share my feedback willingly, and all of our collaborators love it all the time.
Yeah.
To hear my feedback. Yeah, that's right.
Terrible. I'll say this. I'll give a specific that is inspirational, and I'm tentative to do it because all of our writers that write with us and in the Age are great. But P.T. Hilton, his ability to create like very creative and imaginative kind of magic suites, power suites, and magical moves and things like that. The guy is just really good. Mm-hmm. And so I'll read something that he writes and I'm like, oh, I wish I thought of that. Mm-hmm. And it'll inspire me to kind of think differently about how we construct our magical, kind of mechanisms and stuff.
Yeah, because that's the thing. When you're working with anything paranormal or supernatural, you've changed the laws of physics. It's hard for those laws to like stay in place. Like once you break one law, it just like spirals out of control. And the Age of Magic has been kind of fun, especially with 6 different, more than us, so 8 different authors writing in it, all with their own ideas and pulling different directions. Like how can we keep it contained so it all feels the same and let everyone kind of explore differently? And I think PT's books early on were really helpful with that he could come up with ways like, all right, this is the twist I'm going to put on it for my series, and this is how it's going to work. And that kind of kept the series on a cool track, I thought. So something, as we work on new series, to think about it for ourselves for sure. What, like throwaway decisions, like, oh, it'd be cool if the character did this. And then like 8 books later, it's like, oh, crap, that changes everything. Everything is dependent upon this one line we wrote in. So that kind of forward-thinking thing, yeah. Yes,
totally. The community of readers, they know our books better than we do. Mm-hmm. Like they'll call us out on something. I'm like, I don't really remember writing that, but I'll take your word for it.
Well, the collaborators will ask us questions like, hey, I need a reminder. What was their backstory? What did they do? And I'm like, it'd be easier to ask, easier to put it up on the Facebook page. They'll fill you in than asking me. Yeah.
I couldn't imagine that kind of pressure. I took a phone call at work today, and 3 other people in the office heard me say something completely different from what I thought I said, and we had to.
It sounds like parenting.
Exactly right. So what's coming soon from Lee Barbant and Chris Raymond?
Why don't you talk about Forgotten Gods for a little bit?
Yeah. So
we're super excited.
The shortest way to describe it is it's urban fantasy. But it's an emerging urban fantasy is what we've been calling it. So unlike something like, even Death Becomes Her, Michael's series, where this unknown world has existed all this time and the main character kind of finds it and has to discover it. Or something like, this is not a great example, but it's just the one on my mind, Bright on Netflix, where the urban fantasy world exists and
it opens.
One knows that it exists. You got to start off with the history. Our book starts off and the world is pretty much the world as we know it. And then the urban fantasy elements come back into it. So not only are we exploring the evolution of our characters, we're exploring the evolution of the world itself as it's running around in it. So we have a pantheon of gods that have been exiled and they are returning to Earth, and they're not great people, is the nicest way to say it. And so their return sparks chaos and war and violence. And we've kind of fallen in love with our main character, our hero, Vic, as she's never thought of herself as a great person either, but she's kind of found herself in this place of, all right, but I have to stop these people. That's my duty. That's the job at hand. And so a lot of kicking ass, a lot of, we think, clever and creative explorations of what urban fantasy creatures and monsters could look like, trying to put our own twist on things. It's pretty cool. Is it okay to say it's pretty cool? Our own book?
Yeah, we're excited about it.
I think it's pretty cool. I am enjoying reading them.
That's great. Okay, well, so I know you guys used to do the podcast, which is on hiatus. We'll say it that way. But how Readers, how can people find you today?
For me, Twitter is my favorite way to talk with folks.
It's because Lee's under. Well, I can't say you're under 30 anymore.
Yeah, I'm 30. I'm
yeah.
a mature individual who likes
You're
Twitter.
no longer my 20-something friend.
But we set up Facebook groups for our different series, so we really encourage our fans to join those Facebook groups, because that way not only can they interact with us, which is awesome, but they can interact with other fans in the series. And that's like the coolest thing ever when we see our fans talking about an idea, talking about what they like, talking about what they don't like, talking about what they are thinking is going to come forward down the pike. So that's just like really cool to me to see this thing that we make kind of come to life all on its own on those Facebook groups.
Yeah, so one group is Forgotten Gods. We can send you the links if you want to put it into the show notes. But Forgotten Gods for the new series. The Age of Magic is where all the collaborators come together. And then CM Raymond and Ellie Barbant on Facebook. We're pretty easy to find. Mm-hmm. And if people want to drop us a line, we can share our emails and stuff. We give out I'll give you Lee's cell phone number. People can just call him anytime.
Oh, yeah, perfect.
Yeah.
He's usually awake till about 4 a.m. So
yeah, it's helpful if you're in a Western time zone.
We actually we do have a website, but it's pathetic, so we don't really send people there.
No,
so
no, I don't like it.
Yeah.
Don't go to the website.
That's okay, but you do have a newsletter though.
Oh, we do, and I can give a link for a landing page for the newsletter. Yeah. That's probably the easiest way to do it. Or people can hit me up on Facebook, and I can send that along.
All of our books are on Amazon. All of them are on Kindle Unlimited.
Everyone.
That's
on
true.
Kindle Unlimited.
And a fair number of them are on Audible as well. So several options. You can buy print copies of a lot of them too. So
yeah,
lots of options.
We get around.
Yeah.
We're working on the film strip.
Oh man, that's the true.
That's the true.
That's
medium.
the true dream.
Yeah. That's right. We're going retro.
I'd love to do comics as well. So if any of your listeners are like, comic artists that are bored and want to write a series,
free work,
contact us.
All right. So what are we going to hear today? Tell us a little bit about what we're going to hear as far as the book.
Okay, so we thought the best idea was to give the prologue and chapter 1. Prologue's pretty short, but prologue and chapter 1 of Forgotten Gods, which is not yet released. It's still it's been through an edit, so I think that it's good to read. It might have a few tweaks.
Yeah, we'll find them. We'll find them.
Yeah, we'll find.
I'll be cringing over here in the corner. Yeah.
But this is the first time, besides our editor, that people are hearing it, or getting a taste of it. So this is like a special preview.
Yeah.
All right.
Can I just put one point of context?
Please.
So the books are written first person. They're going to be from our main character's perspective. But
she's a female.
Yeah. So you're
going to have to hear the voice.
Yeah, I'm not doing a voice. That will be no fun for anybody. But for these books, our prologue and epilogue are written from third person from someone else's perspective. So we're going to start with the prologue, one character's perspective, and then shift over to our MC's perspective. And that's what the rest of the book will be like from her point of view.
Okay. All right. And this is the upcoming book about the American God?
Yep.
Yeah. We call it American Gods, but like fun.
Yeah, it's like American Gods, but fast and fun.
Yeah.
Yep.
What is the title of it?
It's Forgotten Gods.
Forgotten Gods. Okay. All right.
It was funny because I was reading American Gods while we were writing this, and Lee had to keep slapping me and say, pick up your pace.
I love American Gods. It really is a cool book and a cool inspiration for this, but definitely a different tone that we're aiming for.
Awesome. Well, hey, thank you so much for coming on the show, guys. I really appreciate you doing this. Yeah, I'm going to put you on the spot. I forgot to do this with Michael, but I did get his blessing later. But so will you guys come back? Get another book, another episode down the road?
Oh, yeah.
Sure.
Absolutely.
I'll come back all the time. I'll read the whole book
next week
for you. Yeah.
Anytime you want, Jason. Anytime you want.
Yeah. Oh, fantastic. This has been fun. All right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we have sounds like the world premiere of Lee Barbant and Chris Raymond's book, Forgotten Gods.
Well, get my reading voice on.
You're so nervous.
Yeah, I am so nervous. Haven't done this before. Prologue. A labyrinth of gleaming hallways stretched before him, twisting and turning to 1,000 ends. To the uninitiated, it might have looked daunting, but for those who had dwelled in the honeyed hills of Carcerum since its conception, the palace of Cronin, hero king of the gods, was as familiar as home. That was, after all, what he had meant it to be. A new home for old, old people. Things had not quite turned out that way. Marcus took the next turn so fast that the soles of his boots slipped on the ever-polished floor. He dug the tip of his spear down into the surface, using it as a fulcrum to launch himself forward with even greater speed. The spear left a gouge in the soft gold that in days past would have been swiftly mended. Now it hardly mattered, for Carcerum would likely be empty soon. The centurion had a dreadful suspicion that he was already too late. The door to Cronin's royal chamber lay at the end of a long corridor, its ceilings vaulting into crisscross shadows. The torches ensconced on the walls were out, except for the two at the very end, and yet he could see the shapes of the two guards standing sentinel before the towering door. For a moment, Marcus felt a flicker of hope, but the moment passed as he saw the guards were not Cronin's, but rather the twisted creations of an evil mind. His fears all but confirmed, Marcus fell back on the hardened instincts of former glory. Gripping tightly to the shaft of his spear, he raised the weapon and charged forward. A battle cry erupted from the warrior's lungs. If this was to be his last great stand, he was going to make it in style. The pale creatures steeled themselves. Their swords met over the doorway, blade to blade. The challenge was clear. But Marcus did not stop or even slow his advance. He had fought and killed greater beings than these. They fell beneath his spear like blades of grass, their bloodless armor clattering to the floor. Pallid skin on gaunt faces faded into the realm beyond, but the soldiers hardly took notice. Of course, his great foe had already been through there. These men were not protecting their king, but keeping aid from reaching him. The black truth could not be denied any longer. Marcus was too late, after all. The great door burst open at his second blow, raining golden shrapnel from its ornate carvings. The spear clenched in Marcus's hands paused involuntarily in its quest for enemy blood. He felt the breath rush out of his lungs. He had long envisioned such a sight in his nightmares, but never dared to think it might come true. Cronin, Marcus's god and king, his hero, knelt before the throne. There was a gaping hole in his back where he had been betrayed. And standing before him was the betrayer, pale and tall, like a man who had been stretched too thin. Lorcan, the self-proclaimed god of shadow. The centurion roared in anger and in anguish, but the creature before him only smiled, then motioned his head. A dozen of Lorcan's forces swarmed toward the door. Marcus charged forward, but the old warrior soon found himself captured in a circle, bristling with gnashing weapons. He tightened his grip on the spear, swinging it with a vigor that might have looked like careless abandon. This time there was blood. Lorcan's curse had yet to take hold fully of these bodies. The howling scream of death rose in Marcus's ears, but he kept turning toward the throne. Above all else, he needed to reach Cronin. Then, with a flash of golden light, he saw his king before him, waging a battle of his own. Even in his final moments, the sovereign was a vision of glory. His blade slashed an arc the same color as his palace. So many of its strikes were true. Marcus could see the sword shining despite the haze of blood hanging in the air and running down his eyes. It was magnificent enough that the loyal centurion almost failed to notice he had been stabbed. His body jerked forward from the force. He whirled around, and the point of his spear removed the assailant's head from his body. An empty torso thudded to the ground. A moment later, so did Marcus. Another traitor moved forward, ready to pounce on the fallen warrior. The man raised a wicked blade, preparing to cut Marcus in half. But before the weapon could fall, the man's chest exploded in a burst of light, a perfect golden sword sticking through it. As the man fell, Marcus could see the face of his king. Cronin smiled down at his servant, and then collapsed. Marcus pulled himself across the blood-slick golden tile, striving to reach the king before his soul departed. Just one of the wounds on his royal body would have proved fatal to a mortal, or even a lesser god. Even in death, Cronin was without a peer. Marcus hoped his killer understood that, and he hoped it made him burn with rage. The king looked up with clouding eyes. "Your Majesty," Marcus said, unable to find other words. Behind the din of shouts and footsteps clattered from the hallway, Cronin reached up with a shaky hand and pulled his servant down with the last of his breath. The footsteps clamored closer. "Take this." He pressed the hilt of his sword into Marcus's palm. "And protect my people." Then he was gone. Alone, the centurion glanced down at the object in his hand, and at once his mission crystallized. He tucked the sword hilt into his belt. By the time the voices came pouring through the throne room's broken door, he had managed to regain his feet. His broad height cast an imposing shadow on the floor. "Stop!" someone shouted. Bodies surged toward him, hands outstretched, ready to seize him. Marcus gazed once more upon his dead king, and then he bolted for the window. No light graced the sky save for the pinpricks of distant stars. The way down was long, very, very long, but it was the only way left. He did not look back as he mounted the windowsill and leapt out into the night. The clamor from the ruined throne room faded away. Marcus fell.
Chapter 1. Sitting in a shitty dive in Brooklyn Heights, I tried not to stick out like a sore thumb. The place was full of mobster lackeys swarming the dirty bar like locusts in a cornfield. Normally, a leggy, emerald-eyed brunette in knee-high boots wouldn't stand a chance. They'd be on me the second I walked through the door. Tonight, I was not in the mood to be mistaken for prey. Luckily, the lights were mercifully low. The bar was so dark I could barely see the guy across the table, but I already knew what he looked like. All these guys were the same. Bulldog jowls, necks like a tree trunk, and a million rings squeezed onto their sausage fingers. Most of that fancy jewelry was of the costume variety, unless the man wearing it was the real deal and high up in the ranks. This poor bastard was about as low down as you could get. He said his name was Frank, although I was sure he thought I didn't remember. The shot glasses lined up in front of me like drunken soldiers certainly spoke to a night that had gone far beyond the human power of recall. Little did he know I had bribed the man pouring the booze. Half water, half whatever the hell kind of jet fuel we were drinking, so I was buzzed, but still ready to rumble. It's not a good idea to be 3 sheets to the wind when you've got a man to kill. I put my elbows on the table, cupped my chin in my hands, and smiled at him. He smiled back, all undone tie and slightly crooked teeth. He probably pictured himself like De Niro in his prime, but he looked more like he had just eaten Joe Pesci. The shadow on his jaw made him look even grimier than he already did in the dim light. I felt a little sick, but I hadn't gotten as deep in the shit as I was by backing down, and I knew I had deeper yet to go. Tell me something about yourself, Frankie. The trick was to make my voice as sugary sweet as possible, the kind of tone that would rot the teeth straight out of your mouth if you let it. These guys ate that shit up, and Frank, bless his heart, was no exception. His grin spread and he leaned back in his chair. I'm an open book, sweetheart. What do you want to know? What I really wanted to know was exactly how much force it would take to shove an open book down his throat, but I had to play nice until he gave me what I needed. After that, all bets were off. Well, I looked at my nails, which had been specially painted for this little charade. I heard you're pretty famous around here. He barked out a coarse, phlegmy laugh. He tried to play off the compliment like it didn't faze him, but he couldn't resist puffing out his chest. I mean, I guess it depends on who you ask. Oh, come on. He downed his next shot and slapped another bill on the table. We were drinking for money, and from the looks of it, he had half his life savings piled up in front of him. A man his size going against a woman like me. It was an easy bet, one that he was about to lose spectacularly. Joke's on you, asshat, I thought. Never underestimate a girl in stilettos and a slinky dress. You're way up there with the big boss, aren't you? I asked, taking my shot and slapping a bill on the table. No need to be shy about it. Maybe I was pressing my luck a little, but he was too sloshed to notice. Frank hiccuped. I ain't nothing next to Rocco. He gestured to the money. This look like a lot to you? If Rocco dropped that kind of cash on the street, he wouldn't even blink an eye. His sleazy grin reappeared. I'm flattered, though, really. And you should be. I traced the edge of his shot glass seductively, watching his eyes follow the tip of my finger around the rim. I think you sell yourself short, Frank. Rocco Durant can't be that big of a deal, can he? Again, he wheezed out a laugh. I wondered if he was going to have a heart attack and die right there on the filthy floor. It would have spared me the displeasure of his company, but right then I needed him alive. I had chose my mark with precision. No one else in that hellhole was as likely to tell me what I needed to know. Dollface, you best not get caught talking like that. Rocco runs this town. He made a loose fist and banged it clumsily on the table. The glasses jumped, clinking. Hey, Frankie, someone shouted. You break 'em, you buy 'em. This first-class quip was met by a chorus of guffaws. I caught a strong whiff of mean booze. A crowd was forming around us, closing in. I lowered my voice. I'm sure he's got people like you whispering in his ear left and right. I prodded gently, trying to ignore Frank's compatriots. I didn't like their intent, hungry looks. What's it like to be the man behind the curtain? We were getting warmer. A few more minutes of this kind of talk and I'd be home free. Frank's face fell a little bit. The corners of his mouth sagged. He looked down at his giant meaty hands and I braced myself for something unpleasant, such as alcohol-induced vomiting. But in the next instant, his expression cleared. It's great, he said. Nobody messes with you if you're with Rocco. There was a weird flatness in his tone. I brushed it off. Frank's workplace woes weren't my concern. I shot him a skeptical look. Don't tell me he looks tougher than you. The guy smirked. Now I know you're putting me on, little lady. Maybe 30 years ago, I could have given him a run for his money, but nowadays, he shook his head. It takes a special kind of man to pull off that scar. right across the face. He drew 3 fingers down from the temple to lip, hooked at the knuckles like claws. I leaned forward, coyly to disguise the fact that my interest had just skyrocketed. Sounds dangerous. Too dangerous for the likes of you, Frank replied with a yellowed smile. It was a strange, almost kind thing for him to say. He glanced around the bar, peering through the low light. You know, he's here tonight. I could point him out if you really want to see him. There it was. I dropped my hands beneath the edge of the table, upending it in one smooth motion. The shot glasses, not all of which were empty, smashed on the floor around our feet, sending glass shards and cheap liquor everywhere. As I lunged toward Frank, I reached to the slit in my skirt and pulled my revolver free of its holster. The other flunkies stumbled backward, cheap suits and ties flapping, a flock of squawking vermin. Someone screamed. Frank's chair clattered roughly to the floor beneath our combined weight. He stared up at me, bleary-eyed and stunned. I forced open his mouth with the barrel of the gun and shoved it down until I heard him gag. Then I shouted at the top of my lungs to be heard over the chaotic roar that had mounted in the room. If anyone moves, I'll blow his brains out. No one moved, but they didn't stop talking. That was fine by me. I dropped my voice and jerked the revolver out of Frank's craw. He gasped. What the hell are you doing? Are you crazy? Where's Rocco? I demanded. He blinked, too stunned or drunk to speak. Maybe I'd let our drinking game go on a little too long. I repeated myself more slowly. Where is Rocco? No answer. So I cocked the hammer with my thumb. The eyes bulged out of Frank's head. I couldn't help but feel a little sorry for the poor guy. I wasn't going to kill him. Every bullet I had was strictly reserved for Rocco Durant. Of course, I wasn't about to tell Frank that. I let him gape on the floor. He'd stopped trying to fight me off, and I appreciated that. Maybe we could get along after all. Under different circumstances, anyway. At that moment, not a single asshole in that shitty dive was my friend. The sound of a door opening caused a tense silence to fall in the bar. Frank's popping eyes tracked to the left, and I followed his miserable gaze. A man, built like a brick shithouse, entered the bar, flanked by 4 of his goons, 2 on each side. The scar on his sneering mug cut through one icy eye. It wasn't white like it was in the movies. It was red. Our eyes locked across the room. He narrowed at me. I raised my revolver and pulled the trigger.
And there you go. That was Chris Raymond and Lee Barbant reading Forgotten Gods, their brand new book. Oh my gosh, that was fantastic. I'm really looking forward to this book. I'm so happy that it just came out. So, like you, I'm going to have to go out and pick up a copy right away. Hey, don't forget to head over to Facebook and like our page. Don't forget to email us if you have any questions or if you have an author you want me to interview. It's samplechapterpodcast@gmail.com. And we'll talk to you again next week. Bye.